Welcome to another episode of the GunBlog VarietyCast with your hosts, Sean Sorrentino and Aaron Paulette.
Welcome to episode 149 of GunBlog VarietyCast Radio, a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. How are you doing, Aaron?
I am exhausted, and I don't mean that in the Adam sense of, I need more sleep. I just feel mentally and emotionally worn out. I need a week of just doing nothing with my brain turned off. The reason for that is that it seems like this past week I've been doing nothing but playing whack-a-mole with little crises and fires and things like that, and it's wearing on me. For people who want the whole story, just click on the link in the show notes, but the very brief version is that there was a, let's call it controversial post on the Operation Blazing Sword Facebook page, and some people took offense at what they thought was us taking a political position when all we were doing was sharing a photo. Maybe you've seen it, the photo of the flamboyantly gay Rhode Island Teacher of the Year standing next to President Trump, and Trump is just grinning like an idiot.
I love that picture. That picture was awesome. This guy, he was proud of himself. Like, there was no, maybe I should be a little bit more careful about letting my flag fly. No, he was out and proud and happy about himself. And he was like the teacher of the year for the state of Rhode Island. So, he definitely need to be proud about that. And the president is like smiling like, it was hilarious. It was just a great picture.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
It was one of those things that, is really cool of the guy to share that cool moment with us because, that's a really special one.
Yeah, that's what we thought. And the problem with that is a lot of people thought that was us endorsing the Trump administration, and how could we, because this administration has done all sorts of things against LGBTQ people, and I'm not even going to get into that. But really the entire point of the picture was Trump can't be anti-gay because here he is grinning like a fool next to this flamboyantly gay man. Everything is awesome. And yeah, so there's that.
It's one of the few times I've seen him just grinning like that where he wasn't messing somebody over, right? Because I've seen him like needle people and laugh about that. I've seen him do that. But he's awful serious looking when he's like standing next to the Pope, and well, how could you be serious looking standing next to this guy?
Yeah.
It looked like they were having fun.
Yeah. We do have some good news. Operation Blazing Sword is now transoceanic and intercontinental. We now have our very first Australian instructor. So special thanks go out to Steve Smith of Wondai, Queensland, Oz, for being our very first Operation Blazing Sword representative down under.
I think, Aaron, that we need to take a special trip out there to Australia, to Queensland, and find out if this guy's legit.
You do realize that it's like a 12 or 14-hour plane trip just to get there, and when we get there, we can't have our guns with us?
I don't think it's that short of a plane trip. I think it's something like 26 hours. So, of course, naturally, we're going to have to fly first class. But it's for science, Aaron. We can't allow just anybody. We got to check this guy out. We got to go see him. And maybe, we can't really know him unless we hoist a few brews with him, right?
Yeah.
And maybe go down to because Australia's got a beach somewhere. I'm sure of it.
Oh, they have lots of beaches. Lots of nude beaches, too.
As long as there aren't too many sharks trying to bite me while I'm at the beach, I'm okay. People can wear their clothes or not. I don't care. It's getting bit by sharks that I'm not interested in. But yeah, we should totally go down there and meet this guy.
I don't think they really have a problem with sharks on the beaches. I think the problem there is with the stingrays and blue-ringed... No, not stingrays. I think the problem is with the jellyfish and the toxic blue-ringed octopus.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, Australia, where everything is trying to kill you. Except for they don't allow you to have any guns. Good job.
So, yeah, that was a bit of a segue. Oh, just allow me this one miniature grind my gears moment. I am really, truly annoyed by chip readers at points of sale. Now, don't get me wrong. I've listened to what Barron said, and I understand that the chip plus the pin is far more secure than swiping. But I have been swiping my card now for 10, 15 years. I go up to the point of sale. I see the swipey thing. I do the swipey thing. And here's the thing, sometimes it works, because even though it's got the chip reader, it may not actually have the functionality enabled. So every time I go up there, I have to look like a dumbass and ask the clerk, do I swipe or do I stick it in? And, sometimes I swipe and it goes that, no, you're not allowed. Sometimes I stick it in and no, we don't have that functionality. And it's just make up your friggin' mind.
I understand, Aaron. You're old. You can't change your ways. I get it. But I do have to say, Aaron, I am very glad that you survived long enough to record this 149th episode of the podcast.
Right.
Though there's some question as to whether or not we actually have an audience any longer, because Governor Terry McAuliffe said that we lose so many people per day to gun violence that I wasn't sure that any of us would still be here.
We lose 93 million Americans a day to gun violence.
Yeah. Last time I checked, we had somewhere in the order of 300 million people in the United States. And if we're losing close to 100 million a day, I don't see how we got through the weekend.
Me neither, but it is kind of funny. He did at the end say that it was 93 people a day, which, if you multiply it out, includes all of the people who commit suicide. So, yeah, I guess.
I would buy that if that was a slip of the tongue that happened once, but he repeated the million part.
Yeah, well,
3-4 times?
How many times have you had a camera stuck in your face? I guess even people like Terry McAuliffe, who should be used to it by now, kind of get, I don't know, they got the deer in the headlight thing going on. But that doesn't mean we're not going to mock him for it. So Dice has graduated her pre-agility class. She did very well. The real problem still is the guy holding the leash, not the dog. And today I stopped at Carolina Ceramic Coatings. Those are the people who were doing the Cerakote job on my competition pistol. Intern Sarah is on like the 5th or 6th attempt to perfectly match my purple CompTac holster. She's very particular.
Hang on, I just want to point this out. Intern Sarah is attempting to Cerakote your pistol. That's cute.
It's spelled differently, Aaron. It doesn't even look the same.
It's called a homonym. Look it up.
Aaron, I am not homonymophobic. And I resent your implication that I am. So in any case, they're still working on it, and it is kind of funny. I mean, I got to see all the different colors, and one of them was like really close, except it wasn't quite right, and she's very upset about this. She's been working her tail off, so I really appreciate that, but it's still in the works.
Well, I'm sure it'll look fabulous when it's done. What's that Billy Crystal thing? You look marvelous.
To look good is to feel good, and darling, you look marvelous. And Billy Crystal is going to come and stab me in the eye for messing that up. Of course, he's going to have to stab half the American population for that one. So pretty much everybody did that to him for years and years on end. I don't know. I guess I should be thankful that I don't have a catchphrase that everybody tries to repeat.
Speaking of things to be thankful for, thanks to Lucky Gunner and Remington for their support of GunBlog VarietyCast Radio. From Golden Saber to range rounds, get a full lineup of quality Remington ammo that ships fast at luckygunner.com.
All right, let's get on with the show.
Beth was in Washington for DC Project 2017, meeting with representatives about Second Amendment topics. She tells us what that was like, especially in the wake of the Steve Scalise shooting.
It was another few days for me out of town once again, and this trip brought me back to our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., where I joined a large group of ladies from all across the nation as part of our ongoing DC Project. Now, the DC Project is basically a grassroots movement of women who are basically fighting for our Second Amendment rights. We're not lobbyists, we're not politicians. Our goal is to converge once a year in Washington, D.C. with at least one delegate from every state, so hopefully 50 ladies, so that we can each go to our representatives, our congressmen, and our senators and just talk to them. Just continue to put a face with the Second Amendment that's probably different from what they are currently used to. We know that women are still the number one largest growing demographic within the gun community. There are moms, grandmothers, there are sisters, wives, and there are children. who are getting involved with safe and responsible gun ownership and even with competitive shooting. In fact, within my group, I had young Beth Walker and her mother Grace, along with my wonderful coworker Kelly Welke of the United States Concealed Carry Association. And we had our group of Indiana, Wisconsin, and Alabama. Of course, as you know, there was the recent attack that occurred really just miles from where we were in Arlington, Virginia, and that did kind of set a different tone for all of us while we were there. But we found great support from our current Second Amendment supportive representatives. There was positivity, there was definitely concern, but there was almost renewed strength and renewed support of the right to be able to use a firearm if need be for self-protection. In fact, one of the things that we talked about with several of the representatives, not just their continued support for the Second Amendment, and not just their support for national reciprocity and for the Hearing Protection Act, we also invited them personally to come shoot with us at our home ranges, and we also talked to them about their own personal security. I know several of them are law enforcement or military background, or some of them actually come from hunting families, or from families that did support the Second Amendment from maybe early years and continue that support with concealed carry. And we discussed the fact that they too should have the ability to protect themselves in Washington, D.C. For those who carry a concealed carry permit of some sort, they should be able to protect themselves in Washington, D.C. while they are at work for us, just as they would if they were back at home. It was very refreshing to talk to all these different folks about their views and their support, and they were genuinely interested in what we had to say. And it was also a fantastic opportunity to get together with these amazing ladies once again. Some of these women come from backgrounds that did not include firearms in the home. Some of them came from backgrounds where they were actually anti-gun for a long, long time. Some of these women have also had very personal tragedies, terrible things happen to them because they were not able to use their firearms for protection. It's amazing to listen to these ladies' stories time and time again. And all we can do is take these stories and take this knowledge and this information to these different representatives and just hope that they listen. None of us are really there in Washington, D.C. to convince anybody of anything. We know that that's probably not going to happen. We know that a lot of these people already have their minds made up, or they have their agendas, or they have their programs that they are interested in and that they take part in. But we do know that we can provide that voice. We do know that we can provide that information and those personal stories. And honestly, it's those personal stories that I think are making the biggest difference. For people to say, look, this is why I have chosen to take self-defense and personal protection into my own hands. As y'all know, my 3 reasons for carrying really are my 3 children. And I don't have a harrowing event or traumatic story that really brought me here. But some of these ladies, their stories were just that. And I know that sometimes it takes that to catch the attention of the ones that are most vehemently against our right to protect ourselves with guns. It was a very eventful trip. It was, I think, also a rewarding trip. I'm very grateful and very blessed to be part of the DC Project, to watch it grow and watch it become even stronger and more focused. And I'm also honored to be able to represent my home state of Alabama. Thankfully, we have a lot of 2A supporters in our state, but as y'all know, even in this time, with the current administration, there can be almost a sense of comfort, which can often lead to complacency. And we see that it's during those times that often people will start to chip away at the Second Amendment. And we know that that chipping away is infringement. So that was another very important reason all of us went to Washington, D.C. to take a stand, to show our support, to thank those who are strong in their decisions for our Second Amendment right, and to hopefully make a difference for those people who aren't, and to provide information and stories that maybe one day could cause a change of heart. Until next time, stay safe and be well armed.
You can read more from Beth at usconcealedcarry.com/blog and click on Pacifiers and Peacemakers in the left sidebar.
This podcast runs on your donations. Go to GunBlogVarietyCast.com and click on the Donate or Subscribe button in the right sidebar. You can make a one-time donation of any amount or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. That doesn't sound like much, but we pay our server costs monthly. A little help from you is a big help to us.
Felons behaving badly. Police charge second man in Raleigh shooting death. Dateline Raleigh, North Carolina. A second man was charged on Saturday in connection to the shooting death of a man at a Raleigh apartment complex earlier in the week. Suspect 2, 20, was charged with murder and attempted first-degree murder for a shooting on Thursday in the 1800 block of Cantwell Court near Raleigh Boulevard. He was taken to the Wake County Detention Center. Police previously charged 21-year-old Suspect 1 with murder in connection to the same shooting. Victim, 26, was killed, and a second person was taken to Wake Med to be treated for multiple gunshot wounds, according to previous reports.
No one who's just listening to the podcast is going to find this funny. You'd have to go and click on the links, but I have just been chuckling for several minutes here because one of the suspects, who I will not name, if you follow the link, his middle name is exactly the same as one of the villains in My Little Pony, and that's just hilarious to me.
I'm glad you're taking something funny out of this, Aaron.
So, Sean, why don't you tell us about these two pony villains?
Suspect 1, 3 counts larceny, misdemeanor class 1. Possessing stolen goods, misdemeanor class 1. 7 counts of felony breaking and entering, felon class I. And then suspect 2, the one that was just arrested. Reckless driving, misdemeanor class 2. Resisting officer, misdemeanor class 2. Possessing stolen goods, misdemeanor class 1. Speeding to elude arrest, misdemeanor class 1. 12 counts, breaking and entering vehicles, felon class I. Felony breaking and entering, felon class H. Larceny of a motor vehicle, felon class H. And burglary in the second degree, felon class G.
Wow. Okay, so that first guy, really not a whole lot, except I'm really impressed by that 7 counts of B&E. And then you get the second guy whose record is twice as long, and then he's got the 12 counts. I mean, these guys weren't just repeat thieves, they were like serial thieves.
Yeah. Just remember, people, it's blood in the streets if we let law-abiding citizens carry guns, except for the fact it's not the law-abiding citizens that are doing it. So what do you do if your bank wants personally identifiable information? Do you just email it in to them? You might be tempted to, but Barron explains why that's a terrible idea. In
Tech Tips, Tech Tips, Tech Tips.
You are damaging my calm.
Tech Tips with the Barron.
Today's episode of Tech Tips is brought to you by All Out Idiocy. So, recently I signed up for Intuit QuickBooks for self-employed. I have a side business doing web hosting as well as doing side work for friends. It allows for invoicing as well as payment processing. Additionally, it's integrated bookkeeping, which solves a bunch of problems on my end. Overall, the product itself seems to be good, other than the annoyance that is Intuit, who, while I would like to avoid them if I could, I can't really, and then they went full damn retard.
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
I got an email from Intuit Monday morning asking me to supply them with my driver's license, my business license, and a utility bill, i.e. they wanted me to fully prove who I am. I say I am. Okay. They at least didn't include a link in the email for me to click, which would be just as bad, but there's no way for me to provide this information through their web application. So how did they want me to provide it? I sent them an email asking what the secure method of transport they wanted to use to send the PII, even noting the email is not to be considered secure. This is the reply I got. Barron, individuals usually scan and email the information to me through this email address. I can then upload the information to your file after it is received. Son, this is a joke, right? You just told me to email you PII, personally identifiable information that can be used for identity theft. You know, an email is like a postcard, right? It's open for anyone to read as it goes by. No, I'm not emailing it. Here's what bugs me though. How many people, without thinking, did exactly like this person said? Just scan and email the info. It's well known in the security circles to be a bad practice and opens customers up for issues. Additionally, they have everything sitting right there for a secure method to deal with this problem. Add a page to the profile which allows someone to upload that information when requested. Then the client knows it's going directly to the company in question, it's tied to the account. Additionally, the company can then properly log anyone who had access to the information. The company now has a record of it. But no, here we are in 2017 doing absolutely stupid shit, largely because people blindly just do it. If someone emails you for PII, find a better way to send it. If need be, share it via the cloud and tie it only to their user account. For example, use Google Drive. I can share the file only with a person's Google account. Ideally though, companies would take the method I laid out above. All the major cloud providers provide APIs for solving this exact problem. It's stupid companies aren't using it. And remember kids, when someone asks you to email a copy of your driver's license, it's like slapping it on a postcard and putting it in the mailbox. Anyone between can read it and no problem. Just don't. Help us fix this poor attitude by vendors by refusing to participate in their bad security practices.
Barron still blogs at the-minuteman.org.
Have you seen the video of the angry woman burning down a house in Milwaukee? Miguel goes over some lessons learned in this horrifying video.
Hello and welcome once again to the Mental Flea Market. Today I have a video to show you. But Miguel, this is an audio podcast, not a video cast. Yes, I know that. I meant that if you have not seen the video of the case I'm about to talk about, I'm sure Sean will be kind enough to provide the link in the show notes. And please people, I do ask you to go see it. Let me get started. This is an event that happened over the weekend in Milwaukee. In the video, a woman apparently distraught or pissed off at somebody living at a domicile that was being used as a boarding house can be seen breaking windows and screaming for the person. The ruckus is loud enough to have gathered some neighbors, and you can hear them laughing and commenting on what's going on. The woman is then seen walking over a nearby shack and then returning to the last window she broke with a red 1-gallon gasoline container, the same one you'll find in thousands of gas stations across the country. The spectators holler and catcall as she pours what could be gasoline and sure as hell is some sort of accelerant inside the room. And she lit it up. Within 30 seconds, that room was gone. 45 seconds after the first lighter strike, fire can be seen in the next room. Somebody, a female, jumps out of safety and you can tell by her body language that she's still feeling the heat on her skin. People now are starting to realize that the fires were real. And still, you do not hear anybody asking to call 911 or saying they're calling 911. By 1 minute and 25 seconds, people around there somehow remember that somebody is living in there and break open the front door, only to be repelled by a huge burst of smoke and gases. The house is gone for all intents and purposes at that time. One person died because of the fire. Now, what lessons can we obtain from this video? At least 3 big ones, in my opinion. Number 1. Out of the top 5 mass killings in the United States, not counting 9/11, 3 were done by fire. Arson. Not assault weapons, quote-unquote assault weapons, with high-capacity clip ghost gun magazines and bayonet blocks. Just plain fire. As an example, arson experts say that in the Happy Land fire in 1990, 87 people died in around 5 minutes. Omar Mateen with a semi-auto rifle only killed 50 in the Pulse nightclub shooting, and he had all the time he wanted. The concept of gun control to stop mass killings is a joke. If anything, I am amazed that more people has not tried fire as a way to perform mass killings. If somebody wants to be really effective, they will leave the guns untouched and go for firebombs. And in case you did not know, Columbine was supposed to be a mass killing relying on explosion and fire, but the devices failed. Number 2, you have seconds to react and save your life. As you can see in the video, life inside the house was snuffed in barely a minute. If you don't have a plan, if you have not given thought of what to do when something happens, you will lose time you don't have and die painfully. Have a plan, have backups, and as Larry Correa says in Monster Hunter International, have flexible minds. Number 3.
You are on your own.
This is not a philosophical statement, but God's honest truth. If you play Blanche Dubois, depending on the kindness of stranger, you're f***ed. After watching the video, I have to say that most people are moronic sheep that can't see danger coming. Is there any idiot in this country that cannot identify a red plastic container of gasoline in the hands of a pissed-off woman as a big potential for trouble? And even after she set the fire, people did not process the enormity of the event. They were laughing and carrying on. So yes, you're alone, and will die alone if you depend on others. Plan your life around that concept. And I am done. Go check the links in the show notes and remember that you can use the contact page if you feel like cussing me up and down. Just hover the mouse pointer over contact and my name shall appear. Click on that. Let's start planning, revise your planning, be safe. See you next time.
Get more Miguel daily at gunfreezone.net.
Hi, everybody. This is Steve Denny from the Pro Arms Podcast, reminding you that this podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
One of the recurring themes of this show is mental health and gun ownership. Last week, Aaron talked about how simple, repetitive physical tasks help people cope with PTSD. This week, special guest Andrew Greene of the Gray Gun Shooting Team talks about his experience being wounded in action and how competitive shooting helped him far better than VA counseling ever did. Andrew Greene is a combat veteran. He first spent 2 years in the U.S. Coast Guard, then 3 years in the U.S. Army, where he was wounded in action, and now shoots USPSA with his 15-year-old daughter Ashlyn on the Gray Gun Shooting Team. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Welcome, Sean. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. Now, you listened to the podcast episode where Aaron was talking about depression and PTSD, and you contacted me because you use competitive shooting as your therapy for PTSD. Can you tell me a little about that?
Sure thing. When I first got back into civilian life, I was seeking PTSD treatment. I had a number of issues I was dealing with just from coming back, not only from the service life into civilian life, but also being a wounded vet and having to deal with my injuries, coming over those injuries and working with that. And every time I'd go to a therapist, every time I'd leave the VA, even civilian therapist, I find myself at the gun range. That was my therapy. No matter what was going on and how bad it was and it wasn't working, I feel like it wasn't working, and I would go through physical therapy trying to heal, and I was frustrated. I'd find myself at the gun range. And then one night on a Wednesday, they were closing early because they had a combat shoot going on, and I already had my gun and I had a couple mags, and I bought a cheap $20 holster for it out there at the gun range, and there it went. That was how I started shooting. For that 20 seconds of when that timer went off, I had full control of everything. I had full control of trigger placement, my breathing, my heart rate, everything. For 20 seconds, there was nothing else on my mind. I didn't know I was injured. I didn't know I was healing. I didn't know I was going through different injuries. I didn't know about any of the mental stuff of coming back to civilian life. All that disappeared. All of it. But that's how I got into it.
So you were wounded in action. If you don't mind, what kind of injuries did you sustain?
I ended up taking 2 shots to the chest, directly over the heart. But luckily I had a vest on. I ended up taking 1 to the right side of my rib cage. It went straight through. That was a rifle. 2 to my chest, over my heart was pistol shots. The 1 over my right side was a rifle, went through and through. They think it was a rifle from the wound cavity. Broke a rib, broke all my ribs. From the 2 going to the chest. I got hit in the knee. I also got hit in the side of the leg, which was a flesh wound. They believe it's a bullet by the burn marks that were there from the side of the leg. They don't believe it was heavy shrapnel. But ended up breaking all my ribs, break my back, my hip, and had a partial knee replacement. And still dealing with the injuries today. But being told you're never going to walk or you won't walk right or anything like that, that's not how it is. That's the worst thing you can tell a veteran is you can't do something where you're out. Mental comes over it all.
Well, seeing the videos of you shooting, obviously you can walk.
Oh, yeah, I can walk great. I can't run like I used to. But besides not being able to touch my toes, and that's partly because of the injuries, and I'm Italian and the wife cooks good. So, I'm not the skinniest thing like I was. But, besides minor things, it's a lot of it is mental. A lot of it is coming through mentally with it, and knowing I can do this and taking control back of my life and back of who I am.
So what was it like coming back to civilian life?
It was tough. You're so structured, and everything is structured for you while you're in the service. Everything is, for the most part, where things are going to go. You know what's going to happen within reason. You kind of don't have the full control. You're owned for the most part. The government owned you. You're under their control. And now when you come back to civilian life, you're stuck to these rigid rules. You don't know how to handle it. It's coming back and it's different. Nothing is the same. What the biggest thing is seeing people moved on with their life. You were hoping that the world would stop, but it didn't. The world went on, and it's coming back to a new world in a sense, getting back into it. And especially after being wounded, coming back into it, there was so much that you had to get used to, especially going to simple things of going to the stores, driving, going under a simple overpass. You're looking at different points of where people could be at. You have to relearn how to do everything on a civilian standpoint to bring your mind back. For control of yourself. It was tough, but it's tough for any veteran coming back, injured or not. The injured adds just another wrench to it, but it's a tough transition. But it's a transition that can be done. Everyone just has to find out for themselves mostly. That's the big thing. You have to find yourself again. You have to find who you are as a person. And once you find that, you're doing pretty good.
So here's what I find interesting. The anti-gunners view firearms as dangerous, as out of control, and items of fear. We see firearms as a way to manage danger, to control our environment, and as a way to deal with fear. Why do you think there's this big difference?
Misunderstanding, fear. It's a natural instinct of survival, is to be afraid of what you don't understand. I'm from New England. I'm from Rhode Island originally. So I understand where the whole anti-gun, guns are evil type thing, and that's what you're taught. You're taught that all these guns are bad. I didn't get into shooting until I went into the service, and then I fell in love with it. You don't know and you don't understand and you fear it. So if you fear it, you're going to stay away from it and you're going to not like it. But actually, you couldn't have anything more controlled than a firearm because there's such safety and the safety mindset that is in the firearm mindset and into all of us who enjoy firearms. Safety is the first thing you hear from anyone. And that is all about control. And we are not afraid if we see someone doing something not 100% safe to say something and correct it, because that is the control part. We want to make sure where our sights are going, where our finger placement is, how our stance is, how our heart rate is, and how we are breathing. It is a basic thing. It is very simple, and everything is controlled. But if you don't know, it's terrifying. It looks chaotic and it looks archaic. But until you do it, it's not. And that's the biggest thing I try to get people who are anti-gun is don't badger them with statistics on how guns do all this and take them out and let them enjoy it and see what happens. Try to convince them just to go to the range. Start off there. Don't insult them. Bring them to the range. Let them fire a gun safely in a controlled environment. Once they see and they pull that trigger for the first time and see the control it takes and see the focus it takes, most likely the mindset's going to change on it.
Now, I got to say, there are probably people out there, probably not the ones listening to this show, but there are people out there who were freaked out at the idea that a veteran with PTSD and combat injuries is allowed anywhere near a firearm. What are they missing?
They're missing the fact of its control. I'm, as a veteran, and even more so as a wounded veteran, trying to find the control back in my life. And it's a form of therapy that's actually very simplistic. Nobody else at a gun range can control me there. I have the control of my weapon. I have the control of what is going on. I have to have such focus on what is going on for the safety that I don't have time to think about anything unsafe, anything else that's going on, what people are having for dinner, what therapist said this, what therapist said that. I have to have full control. And that's where it brings into it, is full control. And I try to get vets all the time to go out and go shooting. And once they experience that control again, they are a different person. They're a very different person. And I've seen this happen over and over, not just with myself, but other people from the VA and from other therapy sessions that I meet, I bring out. They see it and they understand it once they pull that trigger again. And these are people who are familiar with firearms and they go out there. Now, but it's also a personal aspect of what PTSD treatment you're going through, what stuff you're dealing with personally. So it's truly an individual basis as all. You don't want somebody with severe alcoholism and all that going out there. They need to get other stuff fixed first. But for the most part, it's bringing back control to your life. You're getting centered. That is your center.
Now, most of our listeners are just average people, like guns. They probably don't have PTSD. They're probably not combat wounded veterans. Give them a reason why they should get up and go to a competitive shooting event with you. What would you tell somebody to get them to go to their first match?
How much enjoyment do you want? That's what I would say to them. It's an amazing environment when you go out to the gun range. You hear all these gunshots going off. And the first thing people make sure you have is when you go to the gun range is not a gun. It's to make sure you have eye protection, ear protection, so you're safe. It's a group of people when you go out there to a match that has every walk of life on it. You could have a construction worker next to a doctor, next to a housewife or house husband, and every color and religion and everything else out there enjoying this sport. And if you're new, that is the best, because you're going to have everyone out there wanting to help you and teach you the sport. And it's a sport that everybody just loves to go to because of that. Everybody is helping each other to learn and grow. And another great thing with the sport is, as an amateur shooter, you could be standing next to a gold medalist shooter that is competing as well. What other sport can you do that? What other sport can the average person go and compete with, and they have a gold medalist, a world championship speed shooter, whatever, standing next to them? But while you're there, it's really, no pun intended, a blast. And when you leave and you're pulling away, 3 things are going to happen. The first is you're going to have a smile on your face that is ear to ear. Second thing that's going to happen is you're never going to feel so relaxed in your life. The third thing that's going to happen is you're planning and trying to see when the next match is so you can go back. That's usually what's going to happen. And I truly invite everyone to go out to a range. And you, as a brand new shooter, anybody, please don't be shy. Go out there, talk to somebody, go to your local gun range, and look online on the website, uspsa.org. That's a local website. Go on there, find out where they're doing matches. A lot of local gun range does little matches during the week on a Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night is a great way to get into it. And it doesn't take much to get into it.
All right, Andrew, it was good to talk with you. I'll see you again soon.
Thank you. It was wonderful talking to you and wonderful to bring this awareness out with PTSD and talk with everyone. And I hope I see everyone on the range, and everybody and all your listeners have a great and wonderful evening.
You can follow Andrew and Ashlyn at facebook.com/GrayGunsGreenTeam. That's facebook.com/GRAY Guns GREENE Team.
Tiffany is still recovering from surgery and will return soon.
And now it's time for Blue Collar Prepping with that bratty kid sister of the gun blogosphere, Erin Paulette.
Come on, every pony! It's time for Blue Collar Prepping with Erin Paulette!
If you're like me, when something goes wrong for someone you care about, your immediate response is to give that person a hug. I make sense of this by thinking, well, I can't fix the problem, but I can at least help this person feel better, and so I offer hugs. But I've never really been clear on why hugs are good for calming people. As it turns out, the answer lies more in biology than in psychology. There are very good reasons why skin-to-skin contact is amazingly helpful in reducing pain and trauma. The first is that mammals have specialized nerves which fire pleasurably when they're touched. Because these nerves are a distance apart, like half an inch or so, a nice long scratch or stroke is needed to trigger them in sequence. And this is why holding hands is nice and all, but a back rub is so much better. You're triggering more nerves in sequence. This also explains why humans love to pet animals and why animals love to be petted. Those long, slow strokes feel good to both the petter and the petted. Tying this in with last week's segment on disabling the rage pathway of the brain, petting an animal is another one of those slow, simple, repetitive physical activities which activates the seeking pathway. Having a pet you can stroke and cuddle is doubly helpful for helping humans overcome anger, grief, and other forms of trauma. Because not only does it activate that pathway, but it makes you feel good. Hugs are similar. It's not just the squeeze that's important, but the whole package. Sliding your arms around someone's neck triggers those nerve clusters, as does the release. This is why hugging someone else who is hurting helps you feel better too. Skin-to-skin contact also triggers the release of oxytocin, a hormone that increases feelings of well-being and promotes the creation of social bonds. When oxytocin goes up, the stress hormone cortisol goes down. This is yet another reason to form a prepping tribe. The presence of other humans to whom we are bonded reduces our stress and makes us feel better. So don't go it alone. Ask for a hug when you aren't feeling well. Offer a hug to a friend when they're having a rough time. And definitely have a pet you can stroke and cuddle, like a dog or a cat, because making them feel good will make you feel good too.
In the wake of the shooting of Congressman Steve Scalise, the Loaded Conversations crew cut an emergency show to let everyone know how much they hate those who disagree with them. In This Week in Anti-Gun Nuttery.
I was working on clips from the only anti-gun podcast, Loaded Conversations, and I was going to lead that segment with a jab about how they're very relaxed with their podcasting schedule. Then Congressman Steve Scalise was shot, and they held an emergency podcast session. Well, there goes that gag. Once you hear what they had to say, you'll see why I dropped everything I was doing to bring this to you.
So just to recap, Steve Scalise was shot yesterday. He's a congressman. Others were shot as well during this baseball practice by a Bernie supporter. Everything I've read points out he's a Bernie supporter.
If you asked me, I'd say it's because Democrat establishment journalists hate Bernie Sanders as much as they hate Republicans. Certainly you've had left-wing shooters before, and the media gives their political affiliation a good leaving alone. The host, Rebecca, whined that no one would talk about gun control with her. Why?
Well, and apparently any discussion of gun violence is political.
Said by a chapter president of the Brady campaign at the start of a podcast where she makes political statements about guns. Go figure. I wonder why we think their attacks on our civil rights are political.
We live in this country where these lack thereof gun laws make it possible for anybody to be able to get a weapon and do something like this.
This is special guest Shannon Von Esley, who's also a Brady campaign chapter president. Though while Rebecca is from Ohio, Van Esley is from New York City.
New York City!
Again, the people who are dictating the laws are the very ones who are the most ignorant of the law. Did she miss that this guy's from Illinois? Not only did he have his firearms owner identification card required to buy the guns he had legally, but he also had an Illinois concealed carry permit, which is hardly the easiest permit in the country to obtain. Also, all the guns were bought through a licensed dealer, with a background check performed. Of course, Dwight Panazzo of Gays Against Guns didn't miss it.
I did hear that both Illinois, where the guy came from, and Virginia are open carry states.
Well, Virginia is an open carry state, and Illinois isn't. And what does this have to do with anything at all? Is he seriously trying to make the claim that if it was illegal for the would-be murderer to carry openly, he wouldn't have dared bring his rifle out of the car because it would be against the law? Their logic is, if we make guns as illegal as murder, no one will be murdered with guns.
NRA has been pushing arm everyone, carry all the time.
Across state lines.
Across state lines, more guns, more guns, more guns. And who gets shot yesterday? Not a Democrat. A Republican who has an A+ rating from the NRA.
Surprise, surprise. When another unhinged Trump-hating Democrat, pumped full of fury by his political fellow travelers, starts shooting, Republicans get shot. As for the guns everywhere, let's talk about that.
The question on everyone's mind, once you know he's got an A+ rating, is, oh, maybe this will change his mind. Maybe this will finally change things. Anyone out there holding out hope on that?
Right.
I am not.
Why would this change anybody's mind? The nut bought his guns legally. He even got a carry permit. He then targeted a bunch of people who didn't agree with him politically and started shooting. Why would his intended victims suddenly have a change of heart and decide they agree with the anti-gunners and want to disarm all the people who aren't murderous scumbags? I'll also add that as House Majority Whip, Congressman Scalise had a Capitol Police protection detail. Nobody else had bodyguards.
There were representatives that were there on the field yesterday being interviewed after being released from the hospital, talking about how they wish that they'd had, a gun on them.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to imagine why a bunch of people who had just been shot at would want the ability to shoot back. At least it's hard for the victim disarmament lobby to imagine. The rest of us totally understand. Remember, if Congressman Scalise hadn't been there with his protection detail, there would have been no other guns at that field. How do you think that would have worked out for the victims then?
To think that just having a gun with you means there will never be crime again, it's just lunacy. And clearly it's lunacy. This is a story sold by the NRA. And everyone knows it. Nobody takes this seriously.
It is lunacy. It's lunacy because the only people who have ever said such a thing are the lunatics trying to disarm us. The NRA would never push such poppycock. The idea that guns could rid us of all crime is a naive pipe dream. That being said, gun laws did not stop this shooting. Guns did. The would-be assassin was the only man to die that day, and it was because of guns. But those guns were only there because Congressman Scalise's VIP status, and they weren't even on the field at the time of the shooting. Funny how active shooters seem to seek out areas that don't have guns. And clearly Rebecca is horrified that the intended victims are saying that they'd like an opportunity to shoot back. It's like she's upset that they might have had a fighting chance.
No, I mean, they're paid for. So, obviously, if you have a press conference after something like this happens, you're not gonna not stick with the NRA talking points, right? If you're one of these guys, I don't.
Right.
Of course, they could be using rational thought and logic about what they just witnessed happening. But no, they're bought and paid for shills of the NRA. Hell, they probably aren't even human. Now the hate kicks into high gear.
My fantasy of change begins with gallon jugs of red paint being hurled by catapults at the NRA building. When that starts happening, maybe change is on the horizon.
Hurling red paint at the NRA building? By who? The dozens of Gays Against Guns members? And do you think the millions of NRA members and supporters might take offense to that? And then what? Really, this is so juvenile. When Dwight fantasizes that his feckless little political group suddenly has friends in power, his mind goes straight to acts of petty vandalism? This is like freeing a genie from a magic lamp and asking for a Diet Coke.
This guy could have been doing something about gun violence and chose not to, and will choose not to again. Unless it's just to make it worse, which frankly is probably the direction he'll go in. And the NRA will figure that out for him.
Except it wasn't one of Congressman Scalise's constituents who shot him. It was a man from Illinois, where guns are heavily restricted. And we all know what a peaceful place those strict gun laws have made Chicago, right? But Congressman Scalise is doing nothing for gun violence. And the intrepid panel of Brady campaign officers are the ones reducing gun violence, while they record a podcast no one is listening to.
Because we have to compromise. We have to be moderate.
No.
We have to pretend that we're, that we only want, and I think it's true, what we want is reasonable.
Did you hear that? She came within striking distance of telling the truth. We need to pretend to be reasonable. This is all a ruse. We all know it. They pretend to want to reduce gun violence, but their end goal is always banning guns. They need the ruse because the American people have made it very clear that they are not on board with UK and Australian style gun laws. While the cast of Loaded Conversations thinks guns are too easy to get for the citizens of those nations. We need to keep the spotlight on this ruse because there are still people who are taking these jackals at their word.
He has been culpable as an accessory before the fact to the shooting of hundreds of thousands, and I don't know how many years the bastard has been in, but perhaps millions of Americans.
Get that? This is a common trope used by Dwight. If you support the Second Amendment, you are directly responsible for gun death in America. Suicide? Might as well be murder if you support the right to keep and bear arms. Gangbangers in inner cities shooting each other with illegally owned guns? Yep, that's your fault too. Dangerous criminals being shot by law-abiding citizens and law enforcement. Wait. Does Dwight think that's a bad thing?
If we had a real democracy with real laws and real culpability, would he be spending the rest of his life in jail? Yeah, of course he would.
Say what? Is he claiming that Steve Scalise was elected by improper means? Also, what does democracy have to do with the criminal code? Just because you think that supporting the right to keep and bear arms makes you an accessory to murder doesn't make it so. And of course, all of this was said while Congressman Scalise was fighting for his life in critical condition in the hospital. Still, as classy as that was, I'm going to let Rebecca herself have the final quote.
Well, and what about this fact, Dwight? The fact that I just don't care at all about Steve Scalise. I could care less. In fact, I a little bit feel like chickens have come home to roost.
She could care less because this isn't a real person who was shot. This was an NRA A+ rated politician. Those might as well be orcs. Orcs aren't human, and they're evil for the sake of being evil. Orcs love it when people die. If by some chance some crazed Marxist just happened to put a few rounds into him, well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Can you see how we got to this point of violent political contention? A Bernie bro decides he wants to go out and murder Republicans. Meanwhile, the people on the peaceful left are cheering him on. Can you blame anybody for wanting to keep a gun close at hand in these times? Their stated goal of preventing gun violence is little more than a bad faith argument.
In addition to appearing here, Weird is a regular host on The Squirrel Report and blogs at weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com.
Plug of the week. Oh, Aaron, are you going to plug this 10K for 2/8 stuff again? I can't say the word I was going to say. This is a G-rated show, or at least a PG-13 show.
Well, yeah, Sean. I mean, we've really only got a few more months. Let's see. It's practically the end of June. So July, August, and then GRPC is the end of September. So we've really got, at best, 3 months to raise the ridiculous $10,000 you required to dress up as the love child of Joker and Pinkie Pie.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing is, I'm hoping nobody donates anything at all because I don't want to dress up as Joker and Pinkie Pie. And I've told you this stuff from the beginning, that this was a dumb idea and nobody needs to see me like that. And I'm not going to let you embarrass me like that. That's why I set the price so high, Aaron. It's $10,000.
You may have priced yourself out of actually going to GRPC, but, that's not my concern because I get to go regardless.
At no point did I say that I wasn't going to GRPC. I might be able to pay for it myself. I'm just saying that if you want me to dress like a fool, you're going to have to pay for the privilege. I'm at least going to be handing out a big old check to the Second Amendment Foundation, big old $5,000, because half of the money we're raising goes to the Second Amendment Foundation.
Yeah, and the other half will go to other worthy causes, including Operation Blazing Sword, which means that all of your donations, dear listeners, are tax deductible. Every dollar you give to us is a dollar you don't have to give to the IRS. So that's good. I also want to point out that a friend of mine from Facebook and also from the Blue Collar Prepping blog, David Blackard, has set up a Facebook page called Pink Punk Spikes and Ponies 2017. And he did this completely on his own. I didn't encourage him to do it. And also completely on his own, he has gotten some books to raffle off. So some of these raffle prizes, there are 2 signed first editions from Michael Z. Williamson, and Sarah Hoyt is sending a signed hardcover, paperback, and a collectible t-shirt from her first Bayan book. And I don't know the exact details, but there may be others. So if you enter this raffle, you could get some really cool personalized prizes, in addition to contributing to making Sean look like a fool. And of course, if we can get Sean to dress like this, I'm going to drag him in front of the camera.
And see, I'm really conflicted about this, Aaron, because some of those prizes, I was looking through the list. I'm like, oh, I really want them. But do I really want to donate money to making myself look like an idiot? Oh, I'm so conflicted.
Well, of course you do. I mean, you might as well try and get something else out of the bargain, Maybe having an autographed book will reduce the sting a little bit.
Oh, jeez. This is going to look really ridiculous, Aaron. It was bad enough with the pony t-shirts last year, but I mean, seriously, Liberty spikes, pink hair. This is awful.
Wasn't there also something about skinny jeans and Crocs?
No, there will be no skinny jeans and no Crocs. I can't fit in skinny jeans because I'm not skinny anymore. And unless you can get the mythical Croc Martens, which are a hilarious Photoshop. If you've never seen them, they're freaking hilarious. If you can get some Croc Martens, I'll wear them. But no. You know what the holes in Crocs are? It's where your dignity leaks out. Oh.
I wear Crocs.
I rest my case. In any case, this all came about last year at the end of Gun Rights Policy Conference, where you and, who was that?
That was Susan Lathrop, Paul Lathrop's wife, Susan.
you and Susan started saying, well, we got him to dress in a pony t-shirt. We should make him dress in all pink next year. I'm like, yeah, no. In fact, give me 10 grand and I'll dress however you like. Otherwise, go away. And you've successfully gotten it so that if the money goes to charity, none of it comes to me, then I'll dress like that. Now, this is going to cover my travel costs to get there to the event, but I'm not getting paid for this. This is all going to the Second Amendment Foundation. It's going to Operation Blazing Sword. And there are a number of others, 2 or 3 others I think we were thinking about. But because of, I don't understand all the legal rules behind it, but we can't name other charities without their permission because that'd be like raising money on their name. We did get permission from the Second Amendment Foundation to mention them since they're getting half the money. But there are other charities that this money's going to go to. It'll all be done legally, and the money that you give, since it goes to Operation Blazing Sword, it'll all be tax deductible.
Yes.
How does that work exactly? You send them out a donation letter, they turn it in as part of their taxes, and they get a deduction.
Yes, that is exactly right. As long as I have your mailing address, whether it is email or physical, I will write up a donation letter because I've got the template stored on Word in my computer. And so I enter your name, I enter the donation amount, the date, things like that. I send it to you as a PDF. And then if you ever need to verify your claim, like if you're audited, you just produce that, and that's a receipt.
Excellent. So I'm guessing that means that if you run a firearms-related business, or in fact any business at all, and you'd like to get a tax-deductible donation and in the process humiliate me on video, you can give money to the 10K for 2A thing through... Now, how are they going to get money to you, Aaron? I'm unclear as to how this works.
Well, there are 3 ways to do it. They're all through Blazing Sword because we are the holding corporation. So if you already are familiar with PayPal, when you log in, you can just send us money, and the address is donations@blazingsword.org. Or you could click on our handy PayPal me link, which is listed in the show notes. Or if you can remember the address, it's just paypal.me/op Blazing Sword, OP Blazing Sword.
Or just go to the show notes and click on the link. It's no big deal.
Right.
But here's the thing, Aaron. PayPal is going to take a little cut. And if you're one of those places that's going to cut us a big check, well, cut Blazing Sword and Second Amendment Foundation a big check, they're probably going to want to mail that check. Do you have a mailing address that they can use?
We absolutely do. You can mail it to it's not a post office box. It's a box at the UPS store. So I can be legally carrying when I go in to check my mail. But that address is Operation Blazing Sword, 800 Belterre Parkway. That's BELLE space TERRE Parkway, number 200-302. Palm Coast, that's 2 words, Florida, 32164.
And against my better judgment, I am actually going to put that in the show notes so that you can just copy paste it to your envelope.
Oh, like you really had a choice, Sean. If you didn't put it in, I would.
But I strongly urge you not to give any money to this charity because I do not really feel like being humiliated and forced to dress like the love child of the Joker in Pinkie Pie, complete with Liberty spiked hair, spray painted pink, because that's just going to look silly.
Well, of course it's going to look silly, and that's why I strongly recommend that everyone does donate. Now, one thing I want to point out is that you want to make it clear that your donation is for this and not just a regular donation to Blazing Sword so that I can keep it separate. And so put 10K for 2A in the memo line, or if you're sending it via PayPal, there's a little space for you to write a message and just write that in there. Just let me know so that I can keep those funds separate.
All right. So that's how you do it, or that's why you should never do this. Do not. I mean, can I do like the Jedi mind trick? This is not the charity you're looking to donate to. Did that work?
I don't think it did. And that was the worst mind trick gesture I have ever seen. Dude, oh God, that was awful.
Yeah, shut up. I'll give you the Vulcan nerve pinch next.
Oh no, I'm so scared you're going to pinch me over the internet. No.
Well, that's our show for the week. Remember that GunBlog VarietyCast Radio is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Find the show notes at gunblogvarietycast.com/episode 149.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the GunBlog VarietyCast. Music courtesy of Rob Allen at blog.roballen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Music. This podcast is made possible by the Firearms Policy Coalition and by contributions from listeners like you. This is a URS production.